So, welcome to the podcast, Blair.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much for coming on. So, I reached out to you. I really wanted you to share your journey. I know you're going through it, and you have so much courage. I think to be able to give people an understanding of what you're going through and sharing your journey. And I think that it probably gives so much hope to so many people that are going through the same thing. So, I'd love for you to share your story.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for saying that, first of all. And that is the reason why I share is because when I was in the very beginning of my fertility journey, that is one of the only things that helped me was seeing other women be open and honest about what they were going through. It helps you feel like less crazy and so much less alone. And so that's really the whole purpose of my account and why I share. So I have a rather long journey that I'm still on, but I will condense it for your listeners.
Mhm.
My husband and I got married in September of 2017. So we are coming up on our third wedding anniversary. And we wanted to start trying to have kids right away. I am very, very, very type A and very impatient, which we'll get to later because I have gotten a lot better at that. And infertility is one of the main reasons why. But we started doing all the things like, I got off birth control many months before the wedding to like let my body get back into its, I'm doing air quotes, normal
Yeah.
like cycle and all of that. And did all the OPKs. I had the Ovia app. Like I knew all the stuff about my cycle. I know people listening are probably like, yep, done it all. Um,
How long were you on the
so
birth control pills?
I was on the pill for a long time. I mean, since I was in high school all the way through till I was like 30, it was a very
Mhm.
long time. And so we started trying naturally with the OPKs and the timed intercourse. And after about 6 months, and I mean, we were newlyweds. It wasn't like we were wanting it to, I mean, we would have been thrilled if it would have happened the first month, but we were like, oh, it's been 6 months, whatever. So then I wanted to schedule an appointment. I was to the age where I had enough friends who, like, I had a couple of not super close friends, but acquaintances that were going through infertility stuff. I had a lot of my friends already had children. And so, I kind of felt a little bit of pressure, like, okay, like one, I knew there could be something wrong. And two, we wanted to kind of get the baby making show on the road. So I went to my OB that I had been going to since college, and I told her, we're ready to start having kids. We've tried for this amount of time. And I got the typical, well, you're under 35, you need to wait 12 months before we intervene and blah, 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 which to anybody listening is a complete BS. And don't listen to that. If you are ready to be proactive with your treatment and figuring out where you're at and just getting a baseline on your fertility, you do not have to be referred by anybody to go do that.
Hmm.
So I walked out of her office, said, thank you very much. I will, and then told myself as I was walking out, I'll never go to her again. And I talked to one of my girlfriends who had recently been sent to a reproductive endocrinologist because her and her husband were having issues. And I said, who was your OB? Because I remember her saying he was very proactive in testing and like getting her into a fertility clinic. And so I went and saw him, and he said, I'm glad you're here. There's absolutely nothing wrong with testing early. You don't have to try for a year. That's so antiquated.
Yeah.
So my husband and I did like the basic, day 3 blood panel, looking at my AMH, which is your egg reserve, an indicator of your egg reserve. I don't want to like say it's the only, because that is a whole nother part of my story.
Right. Yeah.
Also, getting the semen analysis, doing a thyroid panel, and making sure my thyroid levels were in check, like all of those basic things that I think any woman in their reproductive years, single, married, in a relationship, whatever, should do. Got those done. And then, when we were doing that, my husband was like, I feel like I have, there's some sort of file that my parents kept on me, like my just medical records. And there's something about my chromosomes in there. And I was like, we should probably look at that.
Yeah.
So, until that point, why would you have? You're a
Right.
normal, like I think he just turned 30 at the time. And it's like, why the heck would you even care or be worried? So we pull that out. and that, like, coupled with all the testing and everything that we did, it was kind of like, okay, this piece of paper says that you have a balanced translocation, which
Oh, wow.
for those who, and it's really rare to know that you have that before you start trying to reproduce. I mean, for those listening, a balanced translocation is when two sets of your 26 chromosomes perfectly switch places with one another. So in my husband's instance, his number 1 set went and placed themselves in the number 10, and the number 10s went and placed themselves in number 1, perfectly flip-flopped. So he's a perfectly normal human. When it happens that way, you're fine. What happens when you try to reproduce is that genetic material doesn't always, 75% of the time, does not flip-flop perfectly. So some people are able to get pregnant, but they never can sustain the pregnancy. If they can sustain a pregnancy, more often than not, the infant dies very soon after birth. So a lot of people end up doing assisted reproductive technology, and more specifically IVF, and more specifically having to do genetic testing when you have a balanced translocation to ensure that you are getting the healthy embryos that either have the same balanced translocation the parent has or doesn't have it at all. So we went from trying naturally to IVF in one day.
Yeah, yeah.
And it was kind of a lot, but again, like, I'm just kind of like a go, go, go. What's the next step? Let's get to the end goal here. And so we were, totally on board 6 months into it. Well, it was probably 8 months at that point. Let's do it. So we did our first cycle in June of 2018. We had a great cycle, tons of eggs. I think we got 34 eggs. We made 17 blastocysts, and we had 4 come back normal, which are right on line with those statistics, the 25% that were normal. And we transferred our first one in August of 2018. It didn't work. We transferred our second one in September of 2018, and it did. I got pregnant. We made it to our heartbeat appointment. Everything looked great. We went on a anniversary birthday trip for our first year anniversary, and our birthdays fall around the same time. We went to Paris and London. It was a great time. Came back, went to the appointment to check, and there was no heartbeat.
Horrible. So sorry.
So thank you. It was kind of like, that's when the infertility diagnosis hit both of us, I think, because up until that point, like, we had just been married a few months, like IVF seemed to almost work the first time.
Yeah.
It's like you have this preconceived notion of IVF when you started, that it's just that it's the Band-Aid that fixes everything.
Yeah, it's
And for
true.
those listening that have been on their journey for a while and maybe done multiple rounds, that's not true. And that's like one of the biggest pieces of information and awareness I like to bring to people who aren't in this space, is that IVF is not a fix-all, and
Yeah.
it doesn't work for everybody. And so that was a really big slap in the face, really hard. And at that, I felt so isolated almost immediately. Like,
Mhm.
gosh, all my friends have had kids with ease, or, their fertility treatments have worked or whatever. I don't have anybody. And it's funny because I've been telling my story a lot lately, and people ask me about the name, and I'm like, listen, I know I wasn't feeling fabulous when I started that account.
Mhm. Yeah.
Maybe it was wishful thinking. Maybe that's why I named it that. I knew I liked the way it sounded. Um, but that's what this whole journey has taught me, is that I always say when I sign off of my podcast episodes that just because fertility is hard doesn't mean it can't be fabulous. And I truly believe that.
That's
Um,
amazing.
when I started my account, it was totally like a selfish motivation. I needed support. I needed to connect with people who understood me. I needed to feel less alone, less crazy for being so emotional, all the grief. Like, that was still is the biggest loss I've ever
What's
experienced
so
in my
interesting
life.
is what you seek is seeking you.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's an interesting way to put it. I like that. But yeah, so um, I found so much support and love in the community. I was completely just embraced by complete strangers. Um, I, you know, I'm not going to say that I got over. I'm still not over the loss, but I learned to cope with it. I learned to have hope again. Hearing from people that are like weathering the similar storms and that have come out on the other side really
Mhm.
helped me. So as we started going through more treatments, to make a long story short, we had 2 more embryos left. We transferred both of those after I did a hysteroscopy and an ERA. Neither one of those stuck. Those were both day 6 embryos. That took us into 2019. We did another cycle, and spring of 2019, we made embryos, but none of them were genetically normal. We made far less than we had the first time around. We decided at that time to switch doctors for a whole host of reasons, which I'm happy to answer questions about that if you want me to. But we did, and we've done 3 cycles with our new doctor. So we had 2 more cycles, a third one in 2019 and one in 2020 where we made embryos, but we sent them off for testing, but none of them were normal. So we had 3 back-to-back cycles of IVF, full-blown retrieval cycles, sending them off for genetic testing, which, as people listening that are going through that know how expensive it is, how emotionally and physically draining, just fails, swing and a miss. It was just really, really upsetting. We got to the point, this was in February of 2020, when we found out our 3rd cycle in a row had failed, where we were just like, are we living the definition of insanity? Are we continuing to do something that is just not going to happen for us? And that's when we started getting second opinions and third opinions and fourth opinions. We got on the phone with a genetic counselor, a embryologist, what is going on? And what people were telling us is you're just on the crappy end of statistics right now. There's no other weird patterns that are showing in your chromosomes. It's just, it's a numbers game. And if you have the financial and emotional and physical wherewithal to keep going, keep going. So we did. We also were a little worried about my egg reserve because we had my AMH retested in 2019, after our second failed cycle. And it had gone from a 2.6 to a 0.8 in a matter of a year, which was very alarming. And so we went through our first 2 cycles with our second doctor thinking that I was kind of on the borderline of diminished ovarian reserve. So we were doing so much drugs. I mean, I was on a crazy amount of Menopur, Follistim, human growth hormone. I added Clomid, all this crazy stuff. And then I was just before we throw a Hail Mary here and travel across the country to do our one last cycle, after all those failures, we were considering doing something drastic to try one more time. I was I just want to, I want to try with less meds. I want to try to emulate our first cycle where we got all of those embryos. And 2, I want to get retested because I just don't feel like that was right. So we got my AMH retested, and lo and behold, it was back to a 2.9.
Wow,
So
look at that.
we thought we were in such a desperate situation, oh my gosh, the eggs are running out. We've got to throw the Hail Mary, and then that just gave us so much relief. So advice to people listening is push to get that AMH tested every 6 months. I mean, if you feel if you've had a big fluctuation, it just doesn't sit right with you, always push to retest it. I mean, they say only retest it once a year. But had we not done that, we would have been so much more panicked. And so anyway, that leads us to, we decided, okay, instead of driving across the country in the middle of a pandemic to do our last cycle, now we're a little bit more calm. Let's stick with our current doctor, which we adore him. But it's one of those things, right? You feel so desperate and you're I have to change something.
Yeah.
But so we felt a little better about really good about staying with him, actually. We emulated the first cycle with the less meds, and we made 10 embryos.
Wow, look at that.
And we got 3 normal and 1 low-level mosaic, and we just transferred our 1 day 5 normal embryo on Monday.
Oh my God.
On August 31st. Yeah. So I'm day 3 days past transfer now, of course, looking for every single symptom.
Right in the 2-week wait.
And that's 2-week wait. Yeah. And so that's my journey. It's still ongoing. It's very long. It's been, so all in all, we've been trying for 3 years. We've been doing IVF for 2.5. So I know there's people that have been on their journey a lot longer than us, but it feels like forever.
Yeah, absolutely. I have to commend you for such courage. I honestly, it's amazing. It really is so admirable how you are so courageous with sharing your story. And another thing is, I mean, first of all, it's so great for people to hear that, because a lot of emphasis gets put on the AMH. I've seen it fluctuate as well as the FSH. It all fluctuates.
Mm-hmm.
And but so much importance is put on there in the medical world.
Mm-hmm.
And another thing that really struck me is that you followed your intuition, which I feel very strongly about that. And that's why, and sometimes it gets overshadowed by the
Mm-hmm.
opinions of these medical professionals. And I love the fact that you took so many different opinions and you didn't just stop at one. I'll tell you, the intuition and that going with that gut feeling is everything. It's a make it or break it in this journey.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting, and it's scary to trust your gut
It
on
is.
stuff like this. And we, something I've learned along the way is that in the beginning, I never questioned my doctor. I just took my marching orders and went along with whatever was prescribed to me. You start to realize if it doesn't work the first couple of times, that every single person is different. And
Mhm.
it really is like, if you're not one of the lucky ones, the ART is very much, you have to fine tune it to fit your body. And a lot of that is
True.
listening to
Yeah.
your own body. And like, there was a couple things along the way. The AMH, I just didn't feel like was right. I knew my body seemed to be doing better on less meds. So I pushed for that. I also, this recent protocol that I'm on for my frozen embryo transfer, literally the only test I haven't done is the immunology panel. And I've done kind of like, and for those listening, like, there's reproductive immunology it's kind of controversial. It's relatively a new field, but it looks at your immune response to pregnancy, and sometimes people just have elevated immune response
Right.
to foreign objects, aka embryos, and sometimes there is a belief that sometimes your body can attack and prevent a pregnancy. So I have done the repeat pregnancy loss panel, which does test for some of the similar, there's crossover there. And I don't have any blood clotting disorders.
Good.
However, I was like, listen, like we have repeat implantation failure. Like that is something that is going on with our journey. I don't necessarily want to drive to California or New York or fly there in the middle of a pandemic to get the best of the best RIs, like to do these tests on me, nor do I want to do like the interlipid infusions just yet. But I was talking to my doctor and I said, can I be on the steroids? Like, can we try that? We haven't tried that. If it's not going to hurt me, And so he was like, no, 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 I don't think it's necessary. And we had a appointment about it. And I walked away like feeling good about not doing it. And then it was funny because I went in for my baseline appointment and the nurse sat me down, like going through all my stuff. And she said, so like Dr. Vaughn, or I can say his name, Dr. Vaughn looked at your records and stuff. And he does want to add the steroids. And I'm like,
Mm.
see, had I not brought it up, had I
Yeah,
not done my own research,
that's right.
so if there's something you want to try, there's nothing wrong with bringing it up. If they can convince you otherwise and make you feel good that as a reason why you shouldn't do it,
Yeah.
great. But you should always have a doctor that has an open ear
Oh,
and is willing
totally.
to listen to
Yes, I was just
what
going to say that, because
yeah.
not every doctor is as open, and some will say, no, I don't think so, and that's it. And they won't revisit and change their thought pattern or
Mm-hmm.
open to something else, a different way of doing things. So I think that that is so important. And I actually want to go back to that. Like you had mentioned, you had a first doctor and you switched. Talk to us about that, because I know there's a lot of people probably visiting doctors, maybe feeling that they should get a second opinion or a third opinion.
Mm-hmm. It was really hard. Other than the miscarriage, switching doctors was the hardest thing for me this entire journey. And the reason why is because I love my first doctor.
Hmm.
We are friends still.
Hmm.
We
Yeah.
like formed this really close bond. It helps that she's like only a few years older than me and we have the same interests and stuff like that. So we really connected. Um, but the doctor isn't the only factor when you consider where you decide to go, what clinic you decide to go with, because there's a whole team, right? Your interaction with your doctor is so minimal.
Hmm.
You get lucky if they do all your ultrasounds and, a lot of it's the staff, a lot of it's the nurses. It's how they communicate with you. It's, do you feel taken care of as a whole? And we had switched clinics. She switched clinics and we switched clinics with her. So we did one cycle with her at her first clinic and then one at the second clinic. And the second clinic was going through a kind of a rebrand, purchase, acquisition type thing. There was a lot of turnover in staff. A lot of stuff was slipping through the cracks. So for us, the two main things were, one, the communication. It was causing more stress communicating with them, and we just didn't feel guided through
Yeah.
like the process. And that was, you're already so overwhelmed. You don't want to have to worry about, are you getting the right calendar? If you
Right.
call with an emergency, will they call you back?
Yeah.
Like all those kind of things. So that was one thing. And then the second was that because our diagnosis is so complicated, and because we had all those failed transfers and then a failed cycle, it was just like, oh my gosh, compounded with the new clinic and all the problems with the communication. We just were like, okay, we want to go somewhere that has been around for a long time.
Yeah.
The doctor's been around for a long time, has seen a lot of cases, has probably dealt with translocations more. And so we decided to go to the oldest clinic in town with the like original founder of the clinic
Yeah.
is
Oh,
our
wow.
doctor. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? So
Yeah.
that, and everyone makes these decisions for different reasons, but emailing her and telling her was so hard. Like I was
Yeah.
crying all day. I told my husband had to write the email. I was just like beside myself. And
Yeah. It is
you,
really hard.
it's like with any of those hard conversations, like when you're leaving a job or
Yeah.
moving or ending a relationship or whatever, you build it up so much more on your end. And she couldn't have been nicer. We're still friends. I was just on her podcast. She was just on mine. Like we
Oh,
still
that's
talk all the
great.
time, so for anyone, I would encourage anybody, like you can always go out and get a second opinion and not leave a clinic too. There is a little bit of awkwardness, like you have to ask for your medical files. And so they're probably like, I wonder why they're doing that.
Yeah.
But there's nothing wrong. Like think about it this way. If you had a cancer diagnosis, everyone would be telling you, get a second opinion, a third
True.
opinion, a fourth opinion. This is a disease, and sometimes it is good to have multiple opinions to make the most informed decision. So definitely be curious, and if something doesn't feel right, there's nothing in the days of COVID, it's easier now than ever to get these doctors on the phone because a lot of them are doing these virtual consults that they weren't doing before. So yeah, that's my
Yeah.
thought on that.
I think that that's great advice, and it is something that a lot of people are going through. They feel that feeling and that hesitation, but they don't want to follow through because it's uncomfortable,
Yeah.
and they get comfortable. Also just going to that place and they know where they're going, and so.
Yeah.
But I've heard so many people that wish they would have done it earlier
Mm-hmm.
when they had that inner nudge. So you had been talking about just all the things that you've learned, how you've learned from your fertility journey. You started out saying that like you at first were very resistant or had more difficulties allowing the journey. And
Mm-hmm.
now you've learned so much. Can you talk about the lessons that you've learned and the difference between now and then?
Oh my gosh. So yes, I've learned so much, and I used to like play a victim to all of this and be like, why is this happening to me? This isn't fair. Like I'm a good person. Like Ted Bundy can have a kid in prison. Like why can't I have, all this stuff? And it's like this life is happening to me and not
Hmm.
for me mentality. Um, and like once I was able to shift my mindset and realize that I'm going through all of this for a reason, I, one of the things I've learned, it's completely changed me in the fact that I'm so much more empathetic of a human.
Hmm.
I never jump to conclusions. Like I used to be the girl that would ask young couples, when are you guys going to have kids?
Hmm.
Never will do that again. You never know what people are going through. Um, and just generally speaking, I feel like I just have so much more empathy for people going through struggles because I mean, up until this point, my life has been pretty easy breezy. I mean, yes, I was married before, I've gone through a divorce, I've had a couple of grandparents die, but like nothing crazy, crazy. And this has been like the longest lasting trauma in my life.
Yeah, it is
And
trauma.
yeah, and so I feel like that one. Number two, it's made my relationship a lot stronger with my husband. We see a like a reproductive therapist together, and that's been wonderful. I highly recommend that for people. You know, we weren't doing that for the vast majority of our journey, and actually my two best friends were like, you guys should really consider that because y'all are going through a lot,
Mm-hmm.
and y'all are having a lot and it was like during the middle of all the failure, you know, where it was just like dark storm clouds following me and Will around everywhere. And I think everyone just felt so sorry for us.
Yeah.
So
Well,
we
great that
started
you had
seeing
such
her.
great support.
Yeah, and it was so great, and I'm so glad we did that. And for anyone listening, like the reason I recommend it, one is because it's hard not to let this whole thing consume you as a
Mm-hmm.
person and consume your relationship.
Right.
And we were talking about it all the time. It's like all we talked about was our fertility and our failure and what are we going to do next and how are we going to come up with the money for this and that. And with the therapy, it's like you have a designated time and space for that
Mm.
talk.
Yeah.
And then you can and of course we talk about it outside of the 1 hour a week or what, you know, but it's almost like if I want to talk to him about something fertility related that can wait, I'm like, okay, we'll wait to talk about that in therapy
Yeah.
versus like always bringing it up. So that has really helped. And that's helped our communication. But then also too, like, when we reflect on this journey, sometimes we're like, wow, like we have been through more in 3 years of marriage than most people go through in a decade.
Yeah.
And um, if you know, still loving each other and still after this goal. And that says a lot for the strength of our relationship. And there's been a ton of bad days, a ton, don't get me wrong, but we've gotten better at working through it, gotten better at communicating with each other, respecting how each other handles it. Like
Mm-hmm.
me, I'm on this podcast with you talking about it. Will would die before he came and told our story
Yeah.
about to
Yeah.
anybody.
Right.
But like
But
we work through
everybody
the.
has their way, you know?
Right,
Yeah.
absolutely. Like it's cathartic for me. That's why I have my blog and my Instagram and my podcast, because talking about it and like using all of this like pain and education and treatments that I've gone through to help others is how I heal, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then I would say like journey specific, I have learned to relinquish some control. In the beginning, I was so obsessed with the numbers and the stats, and if I didn't hear a test result back by noon, I would be blowing up the clinic, like calling them. Like now, I'm just like, why? That is causing so much more stress. Like they're gonna call you, they're
Right.
not gonna forget about you.
Yeah.
Just let it go. Like you've done what you can do. Like get through that egg retrieval. And then when they call you with your results, they call you.
Yeah.
And there's literally nothing I can do. No stress in the world is going to change the outcome. And that is a practiced thing. And people listening are like, yeah, easier said than done. And I still stress out and but I try to realize, I try to like reel myself in and be
Mm-hmm.
like, hey, Blair, you're spinning out. Like reel yourself in. Is this stress going to change the outcome? No. Um, Focusing on what you can control is what I've learned. So your body in every way, mental, I do a lot
Mm-hmm.
of meditation.
Good. That's
Um,
great.
I love Insight Timer. I love Expectful, which is like a fertility meditation app. I love Spotify. There's tons of meditations on Spotify. You can get on YouTube, free ones. I mean, plethora.
Mm-hmm.
I go to sleep to one every night. I love doing that. Um, and then the physical, I love working out. That's a really, really hard for, you know, people that are listening that are going through this. You have so many like restrictions on certain times of your cycle. Like right now, I can't work out other than like walking, but I've embraced walking. I think that that's been really nice. But just staying active and taking care of your body, eating well. I love cooking. I love eating healthy anyway. But just kind of exploring with recipes and like all the different kinds of food that you need during different times of your cycle. This is like gotten my husband and I into the healthiest state we've
Mm-hmm.
ever been in, like cutting back on caffeine, alcohol, like dairy, gluten, like all those things. So yeah, I mean, those are the main lessons I'd say.
It's
Just
a huge motivator, that's for sure, to take care of
yeah.
yourself. And at what point did you feel that shift? That might, because it was a perspective shift at one point.
Yeah, I think um, it was after. It was probably after my my first like completely failed cycle. So the second cycle with my first doctor where we made embryos, but none of them were normal. That was the cycle that I was so obsessed with. I mean, I ate vegan. Took every supplement. I did everything to a damn T
Hmm.
and nothing. And I was like, okay. like, and then I was just so obsessed with the numbers and just so stressed and like, so, and then I was just like, you know what, Blair, like control what you can control, but like, don't let it rule you. Like, don't let it rule your life. Because it's almost like if trying to control so much is to your detriment, it's making you even more stressed out, then what is the point of the control in the first place? Because you're just like sacrificing your mental sanity for what,
Right.
So I think then, but I will say it's like a constant struggle. And yeah, I guess like after seeing that one cycle can fail when I was so obsessive, and then the next cycle I was kind of more loosey goosey,
Hmm.
same result.
Hmm.
And so I was just like, all right, so really, yes, do like trying to control everything and like only have glass containers and don't drink plastic water bottles and this and that. Like, I'm sure it helps a lot, but like
Hmm.
if it's to your detriment, it
Yeah.
just, you know,
No,
just
I'm
balance.
with you. I'm with you. I mean, because there are a lot of things that I teach my patients when they first come, but I work with them. If it's easy for you to not eat certain foods, fine. If not, we can work it into,
Yeah.
making it easy, because then you get so stressed out that
Mm-hmm.
it's not helping at all. But what's interesting too is that I just really find that there's a purpose for every single phase.
Mm-hmm.
There's a purpose for the stressed out phase. There's a purpose for the feeling really upset phase, where you're just in it like 100%, you're not able to see past it. And that is okay too. Like in Chinese medicine, it's all about energy. So if that's what the energy is at that moment, allowing that energy, allowing yourself to cry, allowing yourself to go through it is part of the whole process.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that faster you really allow yourself to really get in there, the easier it'll be, the more it'll flow through, and then you'll come out of
Totally.
it with more clarity.
I would, yeah, I definitely want to talk about the Chinese medicine aspect. So sorry I skipped that. So
Oh,
I
no.
I'm a huge acupuncture junkie. I have gone, when I'm leading up to treatment, I go twice a week, and I did for the first time. I switched
At what
acupuncture.
point did you start acupuncture?
Oh my gosh, I've been doing it since we were trying naturally.
Wow.
I've stopped. I've like, there's been a couple cycles where I've stopped
Yeah.
because it's like that. It's like that again. Back to if it's causing more stress,
Yeah,
cut it out.
absolutely. Yeah. And it
And
takes a
for
lot of time too.
Yeah, well, and for me, it was in like one of the dark places of the journey where I was just like, oh my gosh, and like more appointments, like whatever.
Yeah.
But for pretty consistently, I mean, definitely like leading up to retrievals and transfers, I've always done it. Maybe I missed one cycle, but I switched clinics recently, and I actually had my first like pre and post transfer treatment,
Yes.
which
Yes.
so like the day before, and then I went there immediately after my transfer and did a treatment Monday, which was really nice.
Hmm.
But I love it. I again like people. I don't know enough about acupuncture to tell you like all the amazing benefits. I know it helps the circulation. I know it helps calm you down. I know it can help your sleep. For me, it's literally the only place where I go and I just unplug, and
Hmm.
I'm able to truly like meditate and relax.
Yeah.
So that for me, regardless of the other benefits, is so worth it. Um, and I did my first Reiki session
Oh,
before
you
my
did.
transfer.
Amazing. That's
It
great.
it was so cool. Yeah, I definitely like felt so present, and I have a really hard time getting out of my head and just being present. And that was a really cool experience. And again, something learned along the way. I feel like I am able
Totally.
to be more present now than I was before.
Well, that's what it is that that's why I don't believe in types of personalities. I just don't believe in that. Now I do hypnosis as well. I don't
Mhm.
believe in types. I don't believe in type A, type B. And I'll tell you why. I just think that we tune into frequencies. We are like antennas. So it's just the more we tune into a certain frequency and we're used to being in it, it becomes like our home. And
Mhm.
so sometimes we're shocked out of our frequency in situations that are so challenging and traumatic. We're
Mhm.
shocked out of our frequency because we're so rattled, and it
Yeah.
forces us to find a frequency that helps us, because we get to the point where it's like rock bottom. Like I need to figure something that's going to work for me and to help me get through this. And
Mhm.
so what's interesting is you're trying out all these different things, and it's bringing such awareness to your psyche.
Yeah. Especially with this cycle because I was like I can't tell you where the like mind the switch flipped where I was like I need to switch to a better mindset, but I will say previously my mindset was always like, well, of course this isn't going to work, or of course we're not going to get normal embryos or whatever. But this past retrieval and especially this past transfer, I'm like, no, I mean, we've been doing a lot of so this again with this journey changing my life completely is I now have Fab Fertility, which
Hmm.
I have my podcast. I've met so many amazing women and men who've told me their stories and like given me advice and ideas on how to change the course of my own journey. But also I've met my business partner. We started Fertility Rally, which is a business. It's a membership platform, and we have a weekly support group, and we bring guests on every week, and we talk about all sorts of things. But we've had a lot of the guests talk about this power of a positive mindset, right? In manifesting your miracle and truly believing that good things are going to happen to you.
Yeah.
And for like the first time, I've I've been really focused on that with this transfer and like this is going to work. Like
Hmm.
this is my time. Like I feel really good about this instead of thinking, what if this doesn't work?
Hmm.
What am I going to do? Instead of like letting the fear take over, it's there. And like you said, acknowledging it
Hmm.
and feeling it, but then like returning back to this positive place,
Yeah.
um, which has been a huge game changer for me because before, like that fear is what ignites my anxiety. And everyone like keeps checking in on me on Instagram. It's so cute. Like, how are you doing? How are you feeling? And I'm like, honestly, I haven't had like, I'm an early tester always. I haven't had an urge. I'm just like,
That's beautiful.
I'm trying to just feel good, like feel a connection, like talk to the embryo, like trying to do
Yeah,
all of
that's
this stuff
great.
that I
I'll
would have
tell you, I
never
really
done.
believe in that. I really do. But I also believe that not everybody can get there as far as what
Yeah.
you're talking about, because some people just, and that's okay too. Like it's
Yeah.
okay to be in that phase until you are ready to move on to other phases, because there's so many people on so many different levels, and
Totally.
you know that. But yeah, but then when you do get to that point, you do get to that point naturally. It comes as it comes, and that's when you feel that connection. I really do believe that you can talk to your body and your body will respond.
Mhm.
They've done certain, I mean, that's how biofeedback is connecting with your body. You are able to do that. I think that our biggest, I guess, our biggest setback as humans is that we don't know how powerful we really are. We don't know how to use our power. I think that that's
Mhm.
really what it comes down to. Something as simple as talking to your body,
Mhm.
something as simple as talking to the embryo and connecting with your body can do so much. And that doesn't guarantee an outcome,
Yeah.
but it does
Right.
so much. You know,
And
I
it sure
really do
it sure
believe
does
that.
help
Yeah.
your it sure does help your mental health along the way, regardless
For
of the
sure.
outcome.
Exactly. And so sometimes I'll have patients come in, and it's interesting because of course I'm going to try everything to get them pregnant. And I think about their reproductive health. That's like, I look at it in that sense. But my number one, even before that, is that they're well, that they feel well, and that they don't have to suffer
Mhm.
through the journey, because nobody should have to suffer.
Yeah.
And it is more of a choice. It is something that people have a say over time,
Over time, yeah.
when they're ready. Um, but it's just such a fascinating journey. I really love your story, and love seeing you. It's like you're flourishing
Oh, thank
into
you.
this new phase,
Thank
and I'm sure you feel it too. Like
Yeah.
it's like you're getting to this, you're almost transforming.
It's been interesting. Like I've realized so much about you learn so much about your body, number one, which I could talk all day about how we need to be more informed as women with our bodies and all that.
Hmm.
But I'm sure you agree.
Yeah.
But I've learned so much about myself and just the human body in general. I have a whole new like respect for life and my life and how life's created. But also like I've completely realized that I have like a new passion in life, which is helping this community. And I
Hmm.
mean, my full-time job is in commercial real estate.
Oh.
And I'm just like, I mean, hopefully nobody that works with me listens to this. I mean, it's my job. It's how I make money,
Hmm.
but that is not my passion anymore.
Yeah, it's not your
And
aligned calling.
yeah, exactly. And so ideally, like one day, hopefully I get to do this full time. That's the goal. Working towards that.
Hmm.
But how cool that this infertility story and journey has like gifted me that and
Hmm.
has shown me that. And had I not gone through this, one, I wouldn't know that. And I wouldn't have made all these amazing connections and have all these new friends. And I
Beautiful.
really
Hmm.
feel like I'm making more of a difference than I ever have. But then also too, like I just, yeah, like you said, I mean, I feel like my husband and I both are so much more prepared to be parents, having gone through all of this, than if it just would have worked the first time, you know?
Yeah, totally. You're not the first that I've heard say that. It really does prepare you. It's just an amazing thing. I really do believe that the universe is so intelligent and things happen. Things happen that are really part of intelligence that we don't
Hmm.
realize or we just don't see from our vantage point. So it is pretty amazing. And so if you look back now that you obviously can see a lot more, if you can go back and talk to yourself when you first started the journey and we're going in, like we're in the thick of the struggles, what would you say to her?
I would say be patient. This is going to teach you a lot and make you a better person and completely redefine your life for the better. Don't, you know, quit being so like results and statistics driven and know that this is going to happen in the right timing, which it's still very hard for me to accept that. And it's we grew up like our generation grew up with immediate gratification,
True.
and I mean everything in my life, it's like practice hard enough you'll make the dance team or the tennis team, or study hard enough and you'll get into the school you want, or it's like all these things. Interview well and make good grades, you'll get the job you want. And it's not that way with infertility, is not that way for a lot of people, unfortunately. And you can practice as much as you want and try as hard as you want and throw money at it. But yeah, it's just not that way. So like accepting that this is a different, its own animal and its own like has been hard for me. But I would tell my younger self to just calm down, let this happen when it's supposed to happen, and embrace like the journey and everything you learn or learning along the way. Um, yeah.
Beautiful words of wisdom.
Oh,
I'm sure
thanks.
those words are going to help a lot of people
I hope
listening right
so.
now.
I hope so.
I'm sure you help. I mean, you obviously help so many people. So I just think it's beautiful. I really do. I think it's beautiful to take
Yeah.
something that is so traumatic and turn it into such a beautiful calling. And I really do believe this is your calling.
Thank
So
you. Of
yeah, thank you so much for coming on. For those
course.
who want to find you and want to learn
Yeah.
more, how can they find you?
Oh my gosh. So, anybody listening, thank you for sitting through my crazy long story. I hope at least one or two things I said helped you. You can always DM me, ask me questions, anything. I get to all of my DMs, even if it takes me a couple of days. But you can find me at Fab Fertility, FAB Fertility. Um, I also have a website, fabfertility.com, where I have some blog posts and things like that. My podcast, Fab Fertility, I have, it's on all the podcasting platforms. I have episodes that come out on Wednesdays and Fridays. Wednesdays are my more like serious with experts or other warriors telling stories, shedding light on various topics in the infertility space. And then my Fridays are my really fun, irreverent episodes that I co-host with a girlfriend of mine who I've met through Instagram. So that's more of a lighthearted, funny series. And then Fertility Rally is my business baby that I founded with Allison Prado, who she hosts a podcast, Infertile AF. And we founded that a few months ago. It's a membership site. There's a public portion of our site, fertilityrally.com, to kind of get an idea of what we offer. And then we have monthly and yearly memberships that offer weekly support groups, other virtual events, tons of blog content, how-to videos, merch, discounts on fertility products, like you name it. And then we have an exciting event coming up October 24th, which is going to be Fertility Rally Live, which is an all-day long virtual event on Saturday, the 24th, where we're going to have 2 panels, 2 keynotes, and 4 breakout sessions. So we're super pumped about that. We're about to roll that out. So follow us at Fertility Rally on Instagram, and you'll be updated on everything we have going on there. But thank you for having me.
Of course, and hopefully this will air. I may be in early November, so hopefully,
Oh.
but it's okay. I'm sure you're going to be continuing all the different.
Yeah.
Yeah, you'll
Definitely the
probably be doing
membership
this
piece.
again.
Yeah.
Awesome. So thank you so much for coming on. It's been such a pleasure. I really love listening to your story. I just find your story to be so inspiring, and I find you to be so courageous. So thank you so much.
Yes. Thanks, Michelle. I really enjoyed this. This was awesome.